Our next speaker doesn't need much of an introduction. Dr. Homa Hoodfar is a professor of anthropology, emeritus at Concordia University in Montreal. Her field research and expertise focuses on political economy and legal anthropology, focusing on reproductive rights, Afghan women and young refugees in Iran and Pakistan, women in formal and informal politics, hijab, and dress codes as political institutions, gender and citizenship, Muslim women's sport as politics, and gender and the public sphere in Muslim context. Please join me to welcome Dr. Hoodfar.
سلام عرض میکنم خدمت همگی دوستان. متاسفانه من دو تا مشکل بزرگ امروز دارم. یکی اینی که به من قرار بر این بوده که من صحبتام به انگلیسی باشه. اسامپشن من این بود که تعداد زیادی از مهمان‌ها انگلیسی زبان خواهند بود. بنابراین پرزنتیشن من به انگلیسیه، ولی من سعی میکنم که در بحث‌ها و صحبت‌ها میتونیم به فارسی باشه. دیشب وقتی من متوجه این تغییر شدم، دیگه فرصتی نبود که من بخوام همه صحبتمو عوض بکنم، ولی در این حال سعی میکنم که خیلی خلاصه تر صحبت کنم، چون برای یک سری مسائل اینتروداکتوری رو فکر میکنم دیگه همه ما آشنا هستیم. مسئله دیگه ای که داشتم اینه که متاسفانه من کمی سرما خوردم و حالم خیلی خوش نیست و میبرم که دچار سرفه‌های وحشتناک نشم. اگر شدم مطمئن میشم که میکروفون رو میبندم که شماها خیلی هم ناراحت نشید. صحبت امروز من در واقع من میخواستم یه سابقه ای از راجع به جنبش مهسا و اینکه چه اثراتی داشته و اینکه چه کار میشه کرد. یعنی این جنبشی نیست که تمام شده باشه از دید من. جنبش مهسا یک جنبش در واقع social transformation بوده که خیلی دیگه حالا من خیلی دنبال دیتیل ها نمیرم، چون مطمئنم که بسیاری از شما میدونین دیتیل ها رو. باعث شد که هم در جنبش در واقع ایرانی‌های خارج از کشور و هم ایرانی‌هایی که با جنبش داخل ایران خیلی آشناتر باشن و همکاری بیشتری کنن، هم یک سالیداریتی بین‌المللی انجام شد و این اثر خیلی زیادی داشت. فرقی که این جنبش با جنبش‌های دیگه داشت اینه که یک جنبش اولا که خیلی متمرکز نبود، در شهرهای مختلف بود، لیدرلس بود یا در واقع لیدرهای خیلی مختلفی داشت، ایدئولوژیک نبود، اصولا هیچ اینترستی روی مذهب نداشت و رژیم رو به طور entirely took under question and rejected. And they were looking for a secular context and they wanted to have a normal life. And that's what made it very different than other although most of us want to claim, especially people like me who were part of civil society and a feminist movement, want to claim this is an impact of women's movement. But the fact is that it was a youth movement more than it was a feminist movement. But it was a feminist movement that created the youth that we see in this new generation. This is what I want to discuss mostly. کاست این البته جنبش بسیار زیاد بوده که دیگه من وارد خیلی دیتیل نمیشم، ولی یک تغییری که واقعا یه جنبشی بود که رژیم رو کاملا زیر سوال بود. حالا من سعی میکنم که بین فارسی و انگلیسی برم. Okay. The human cost of this regime was, this uprising was a lot, because regardless of the death toll and imprisonment, many thousands of students were expelled from university or they were under arrest. But specifically, it targeted women. Like the injuries were like directed at women, their eyes, their breasts, and their genital. So it was a very specific form of repression that was raised that needs discussion. Of course, then this attracted a lot of the whole uprising, attracted a lot of attention outside. And then again, there was this question of the Iranians were different. This society, no one expected such an uprising. And so exceptionalism in a way that it almost took away the credit of a nation that has worked so hard for 40 years to create such a movement. So, and of course, many Iranians also joined, because it's a kind of prestigious to say that Iran is exceptional relative to other Middle Eastern countries. But if you look at the history of this movement, the movement, several generations have worked hard to create this transformation and this movement. I don't want to go through the detail, but if you looked until we started 1850s with Tahir taking the hijab off, but also participation in tobacco movement, that really was the beginning of the women's movement. Women were the first row of the tobacco movement, and because the British had given the monopoly to the Shah had given monopoly to the British. And of course, this would mean a disaster for bazaar and economy of Iran. When the opposition, it was the first row of the opposition were women. So when they opened fire on demonstration, it was first the women on the first row were the first people to die. And so this really mobilized women and made them political in the modern sense. Not that they weren't political before, but they were in the modern sense, demanding rights that they didn't have. So they participated in the Constitution Revolution. They later, of course, when the Constitution was successful, women got nothing. In fact, when I was in the second grade, I couldn't believe my teacher when she said that the criminal, the insane, and women do not have the right to vote. And I was sure, because of all the discussion that was going in my home, I was sure she was wrong. And I got up and said, that's a mistake. Women, like men, have the right to vote. And she said, no, this is not the case. So I waited until I go home and discuss this with my father. He said, well, we have tried, but it didn't work. Now it is your generation. You should do it. But you have to finish your education. I said, no, I don't want to wait. I want to do it from now. But anyway, so there's a longer story about that. But so I want to say that at that age, women were conscious that they are being treated wrongly. Anyway, women continued for demanding reforms. They organized mock election. They had meetings. They lobbied the government, but they focused on increasing education, because that's one way of mobilizing women. So in that revolution, then women participated massively in the Iranian revolution, demanding democracy and freedom. And role of a citizen that has a right-bearing citizen. Of course, Khomeini came to power. We all know what happened. On the 7th of March, he announced that hijab is compulsory. We had the largest demonstration that women had. The estimate goes from 15,000 to 30,000. It's not really clear, but we know that today is the largest demonstration we had. What is important, and often we as secular forget to mention, is that many women who had hijab then actually participated in that demonstration. And because they knew if today they say what you have to wear, tomorrow they're going to say other things. So that was very important. And also I wanted to mention that even at that time, there was a revolutionary time where opposition to the new, not yet established regime was very difficult. But there were people, Azam Talaqani, Zahra Rahnavard, and Fatima Hashemi wrote open letter to Khamenei to say that this was wrong. So this was a very brave action at the time. I don't want to focus on that very much. So the early time sign of backlash started really within 2 weeks of the regime, getting all the rights that women have worked for 50 years to achieve, and then they would they were taken away by just signing it out, and this was really a major shock to the Iranian women who had participated in the revolution. But they didn't give up. I mean, they immediately organized. They participated in the election. They wrote letters. They organized meetings. They had sitting in the judiciary when they were deprived of being judges, which was very important at that time. It was a very important gain of women at that time. And the other very important thing, apart from all the segregation in the sport and cancellation of marriage law, which affected almost all the women, putting the age of marriage as 9 and later became 13, women immediately started to react and worked hard. What they did, they participated in the election, but they also chose always the more liberal group. So they experiment of actually taking the spaces that were left to them to try to advance their cause. But also more than that, it was keeping those discussions on women's rights and gender equality as part of the public space. One of the initiatives that they had used almost immediately was the everyday form of resistance. What they did, they politicized the spaces that before that no one considered those as a political space, like fashion, changing the style of clothes, wearing the wrong. Well, the regime wanted everyone with black and navy and gray, but they wrote all the bright colors. And whenever they were stopped, they would say, well, the Prophet's favorite color was pink. I mean, there were all sorts of reasons, and so they made the whole regime in this ideology of gender really difficult for them. Whether it was sport was not considered something politicized until then, but it was they made it politicized and used that as a way of demanding their rights and questioning the regime's gender ideology that considered women a lesser, not just a lesser citizen, but lesser human being. But they didn't give up. They continued to mobilize. They gained, especially when Shirin Ebadi got the Nobel Prize. It brought a newer understanding. But in fact, it was almost like everybody else got there, and it gave them like there is a world outside the walls of Iran that they know what is happening. So that was very important. But and this mobilized people. However, what was a turning point from my point of view was in 2005 women, in 2005 during the election, they mobilized a public demonstration in front of the university. This was, of course, in Iran, they couldn't advertise. It was the word of mouth. Like, I heard it in Montreal, and I made sure I'll be there. But there were people who had come from Kurdistan, from different major cities, and although the regime had stopped people, like maybe about 6,000 people, they were in front of the university, and they sang songs, they put their demands. One of the major demands they had was the removal of all the legal clauses in the Constitution and in the family law that was, in the name of Islam, was taking away women's rights. Apart from the people who were there were always maybe as many as 10,000 people were prevented to join this demonstration. This gave a new kind of life to women's movement, because until then we had secular women at one point, and then we had women who were religious activism. There were different groups, the seculars, and you had the left, and you had all the different groups. This was the first time they had come together, and suddenly it was, they realized together they can do a lot more. Although their demands was obviously not heard, but they continued doing, they continued organizing different campaigns, 1 million signature campaign, and also the women's citizens, equality of women's citizenship, access to a stadium. So it was a lot of discussion about which kind of campaign. Like, access to stadium was definitely directed at the young people. The family law directed women. Equal citizenship was something that it was a big problem because a lot of women were married to Afghanis. Their children couldn't go to school. They either had to go to back to Afghanistan during the war, and also then, or give the children to their husband and stay in Iran. So these were very important public discussion that women participated and worked on it. But during this time, they also realized they really need something more collective. So writing a charter was a very important thing. For the first time, women discussed how would we write a charter, what should be in charter. Of course, women had tried, as Dr. Carr mentioned before, is that the CSC was a very important movement. Although we were all part of this, working and a lot of discussion happened, but really the majority didn't want this regime to accept it, because by putting so many clauses, then it would make it useless, just like Saudi Arabia has done it. But we used that as a space to mobilize and bring consciousness to many people who didn't understand how UN may relate to the everyday lives of women. During the charter, this was discussion about how do we write a charter about doing research across different parts of Iran. We bring people together. It will be looking at rural women, urban women, worker women, nurses, all the different unions. So there was a lot of research and discussion went into it. Then it was, but they had never written a charter. So how do we write a charter? It was, okay, we invite people who like South African women. There were women from Sri Lanka that they had one of the earliest charter. They came and discussed. I had worked on Afghanistan, and I had also been, part of my research was on women's charter and its impact in the Constitution and also in government's policy. So this became part of major discussion. Nonetheless, a lot of us didn't really feel that it may be major change. But then what happened, the charter, when the invitation came, 150 women during the snowstorm came, and it was such excitement. and get to write a charter of their own. It was the first time women were writing together, sitting, what is it that they want from the government? It wasn't like about what we don't want, but what we want. Of course, charter was published during the election, just before the 2009 election, and it was supposed to be an instrument that people could then work with at least the reformists if they were. They also formed a lobbying group and actually went to see different groups. There were two groups, the one that worked more religious, from the religious women and secular women, and did a lot of discussion about, with different regime, with different candidates, pushing for having women minister, how many women were changing the laws and all of that. And this lobbying made a difference. And that, again, a lot of people made a major discussion. But unfortunately, 2009 happened, and with the upheaval of over the election, we could never use the charter as a political tool. But nonetheless, it was a tool of consciousness that women used. After 2009, there was still a lot of activity, as we know, but this time, because the cost was high, a lot of it was individual women, especially with connection with the West. But what I want to, I can see the time is running out, so I want to focus actually more on a recent event that has happened. With the, after Mahsa Revolution, in some way, then we came forward to see, okay, the revolution has happened. How did we get here? How did this social transformation happen? The social transformation was then women started looking at their past, what has happened, and then during that time, a group of us came together to actually say, okay, people who were involved in the charter, what do we want? I mean, we say woman life, freedom, but what does it mean? We have all these nice slogans. How does it translate into what women need? We, after many discussions from October 2002, we sat together, we fought with each other, we cried, anyway, then finally we wrote the Women's Bill of Rights that on the 8th of March of 2023 was launched as a living document, so that it was as a base for discussion. There was a lot of discussion also, why Bill of Rights and not Constitution, and why is it so many, each clause has got so many sub-articles, it's too long, who will read it? But the point is, if we just say the major things, then again, who's going to translate them? The argument was, we have to say, what do we want in more detail? So tomorrow somebody else cannot translate it for us. So it was a lot of talk. It was then a major meeting on Zoom, which people participated both from Iran, from across Europe and even India, for this discussion. This is a 3-hour movement, and then after which we invited people to give more comments and tell us what is missing, what we should do. And we had several 150 comments at some stage, which we tried. We inserted, we had discussion, and it's going on. And so we actually then, the arguments, it was a version 2, version 3, version 4 is being actually completed now. I had hoped that we had completed and on the site. The idea is, now we have this bill, but what is the next step? We need to popularize it. We need to discuss it. We also need it's not, unfortunately, with all the claims about women life, freedom, and everybody talking about women life, I don't see that a lot of a political organization, men groups, and all this actually introduce it, discuss it, take it. claiming to be for gender equality and being feminist is not just a claim and talk, but you also have to have action. So we actually have tried to encourage this, try to bring experts to discuss it, make it in a public sphere. We have had many webinars, but usually in each of these webinars we have had only a couple of male participated, which is unfortunate, because we, with all the claim and all the discussion on gender equality, then again we haven't really gone to that point. But part of the bill is to actually talk about different constitution. How does if you talk to a lot of women, for instance, when we talk about family law, everybody relates. When we talk about gender segregation, everyone discuss. But they don't see the link between the Constitution that is written and the laws. So one of the issues is, rather than putting a Constitution as up at a different level, bringing it down to discuss how does it relate to our lives, everyday life? How does it relate to the normal family law or rights to work, right to education? So we have brought people from different contexts, both from South Africa, from Nepal, from Colombia, from different countries, how women actually have participated in discussion, and showing that where women have participated in the constitution making, both in terms of peacemaking, in terms of advancement, and in terms of a citizen feeling they own their government. It has been very successful in that way. But we need a lot more to work to bring. Now, again, discussion between different regions in Iran is very important, because in terms of cultural practices, demands, and all this, we have to continue this discussion, which although is happening, is not at the level that we like. And sometimes this worrying about maybe if we talk about these issues will create a division, and the unity of Iranian will become a political issue. So that was one of the issues. But drawing lessons from other countries and discussing, bringing the problem will not be solved if you put it under the carpet. We have to solve it by discussing about it. So I want to end here and really open the discussion about how can we have to what way we can participate about this social transformation. Social transformation is the most important part of whether you want to call it a revolution, a social change. A lot of time when we have a revolution, just the regime changes. So some men will leave and some other will come to power. But if we don't have economic change and social transformation, the cultural change is the most important aspect of making a revolution a real revolution, not a change of regime. So this is how we have to look at it, and we have to bring the discussion, the debates around the issues, making it a dinner table discussion. Just like we discuss films, we can also discuss these. And it's very important to, what I really have enjoyed is actually seeing how this Mahsa revolution has been both, have affected art and has also been performative in that way. Art and music and songs have been very much part of this the revolution. We should continue that. And it was a pleasure to see some of the music and the videos yesterday, especially. It was almost like we are halfway there. So the question for me is that I ask myself, and I also think we all should continue asking, what should we do? What are the exact things we can do? Going to demonstrations is important, but it's not the only thing. As I said, we have to make the issue of what do we want a dinner table. When the first meeting we had about writing this Bill of Rights, after all the discussion, I asked everybody to send me their wishes. So what do they wish to see in the Constitution? Because I was the drafter. So only one person amongst all of the 35 of us, one person submitted a wish. It's just that we have never, even when we have been activists and advocates for legal change, we haven't allowed ourselves the time to think, what is it we want? We have so much focus on what we don't want that we haven't focused on what we want. And so this became the part of discussion. And what I feel we need, sitting here in peace and comfort, one of the things we have to spend time to think about, what is it we want? We don't want to leave it for just the expert. The expert we have to say what we want, and the expert can put it in legal language. The expert can help us along the way, but we don't want them to lead us. So that's an important discussion that we had, and I think that's a discussion for everybody, for all of us to continue, and that's what I like us to maybe spend the rest of the time to discuss today. Thanks.
It is always illuminating to hear specialists talking about women's problem in Iran, and you're definitely among that generation of women. I don't know, it's second, third generation of Iranian women who are fighting for women's rights, and you're definitely one of those influencing people among them. So I'm going to open the floor if there are any questions. I think there are mics if you want to comment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hoodfar, for bringing this issue, which is an important issue, to the more lightful situation. I just wonder that based on your experience, whatever you did is a global subject that you approach and with different women from other countries, but is applicable to all countries or just Iran? What is the situation what all the things that you did, all the jobs and all the discussion you did?
Well, the bill, it was only Iranian involved. We have a couple of experts actually one expert who's from India, that then once we have written and the English translation was done, we wanted to make sure that we have but we have all the other experts. Khanme Kar is here. We have a lot of young lawyers from Iran who were part of the group. As I said, I don't want to idealize how the group sat together. As I said, we fought, we cried, some people left, then came back. So there was, because we all came from different experiences, we brought our differences there. So the bill was absolutely written by Iranian for the situation in Iran for various demands. But of course, initially we had also invited women from South Africa because they have a long history for 50 years, they have made a charter, they fought, and they sat at the Constitution, they had experience. We invited people from other countries that they have especially gone through either reform or new writing of the Constitution. We also used the experience of Egyptian, Tunisian, Moroccan, different way because each of these countries, although Morocco didn't have an uprising like Tunis and Egypt had, but they went through a major reform of constitution, and women played a major role in that. So using experience of other people, it was actually quite beneficial, and suddenly things became much more realistic because it wasn't like what ideally we want, but what is practical? What can we do within the framework? Because in the Constitution, you have to make sure you don't leave anyone behind, but at the same time, you don't want to keep everyone at this level. So a Constitution has, by its nature, has to be accommodating, but also has to include include and see at least like one of the examples they use, like a constitution should see at least 20 years ahead of time, be open to for reform, but it shouldn't be too advanced that leave almost everybody else except the elite included.
Hello, good evening, madam. I'm curious, my generation has migrated from India 3 generations during the time of Cyrus. I would be curious to know, are the Iranian people forced to embrace Islam, or are they free to choose their religion? Maybe, and if Islamic religion is imposing, are they compromising the integrity or out of fear of out of persecution? If you can shed some light, I would appreciate.
Well, in Iran, statistically, 90% of people are from different kind of Muslims, whether Sunni, Shia, or other. But many today is actually one of the public opinion that showed that Iran is probably in the Middle East is the most secular society because of the experience of having the religious rule imposed on them. But like most other society, when a child is born, it doesn't choose its religion. Like you inherit religion. Some of us may have left religion, but culturally, you can't really easily separate the culture from the religion because it's been so integrated over 1,000 years. But what is regime imposing is not really what, the reason why regime is imposing is because people don't accept it. Because a culture, when a culture is a culture because no one imposes it, is owned by community, is practiced by the community. You don't need a police, you don't need a law to bring in to make the culture. You can work toward transformation of a culture, but that has to come from the below, not from above. In Iran, what regime is imposing is, of course, that's why they have to have I don't know, some 30,000 moral police to impose it on people. That's the regime ideology, I think, and that's what I said in the Constitution. In this Mahsa movement, they want a secular regime. They have no interest in religion. I mean, religion they consider a private matter. You can be religious or not religious or godless or whatever, but it was very important to distinguish between what people believe and what is imposed on people. As I say, I mean, this regime wants to send everybody by force to heaven, and people want to leave the heaven to them. So I guess that's the best I can explain.
با یک دنیا تشکر از خانم دکتر هودفر و تبریک به اینی که شما تونستین این تعداد زنانی رو گرد هم بیارید از راه دور که بتونن دسترسی پیدا کنه به نوشتن این منشور و بسیار جالبه و لازمه که دوستان دیگری که دستن در کار هستن بتونن در بخشیدن قنای بیشتر به این مسئله بپردازن و به خصوص اینی که پیدا کنیم اونچه که باید کرد و اونچه که نباید کرد. ممنون از شما و فوق‌العاده کار زیبایی کردین.
متشکرم. خانمای زیادی همونجور که گفتم زحمت زیادی از طرف خیلی ها بوده و خیلی کامنت هایی که در ماه اول ما حدود 150 تا کامنت داشتیم. آنچه که من متاسفم اینه که تنها کامنت هایی که از طرف آقایون اومد چند تا کامنت از داخل ایران بود که چند تا از اونها خیلی هم مفصل، یعنی چندین صفحه کامنت برای هر آرتیکل و ساب آرتیکل نوشته بودن، ولی من کامنتی به خاطر ندارم که نوشته یا کسی به عنوان کامنت از آقایون خارج از کشورش. و این برای من خیلی جالبه، برای اینکه ما میدونم که ایرانی‌ها وقتی دور هم میشینن همه راجع به پلیتیک حرف میزنن، به خلاف اینکه این گرد همایی قرار پلیتیکال نباشه. ولی موقعی که من اوین بودم، یکی از خانمایی که بعض وقتا به عنوان البته من تو سالیتود بود انفرادی بودم، ولی بعض وقتا چند تا خانمای سکس ورکر بودن که چون دبی کار میکردن اینا رو گرفته بودن و اینا رو وقتی که با هم دعواشون میشد به عنوان تنبیه مینداختن توی سلول من. خب اونا دخترای جوانی بودن، از نظر زندانبان ها این بود که اینا تنبیه میشن اگه بیان پیش من و منم تنبیه میشم، چون فکر می‌کردم من خب چه حرفی دارم با اینا بزنم. البته برای من فرصتی بود با همه این خانم‌ها اینترویو کردم از زندگیشون. اینا یکی از این خانم‌های خیلی جوان گفتش که ببینید زندگی تو ایران یک جوری شده که اصلا هیچ کس، همه کریمینال هستن، برای اینکه شما هیچ وقت نمیتونید قانون استفاده کنید. حتی اگر همین ریولوشنری گارد بره خونه آقای خامنه‌ای، حتما یک کتابی هستش که غیر قانونیه، شاید یه بطری ویسکی اونجا باشه، شاید که اصلا خامنه‌ای دائم نظرش رو عوض میکنه. خب این خودش غیر، اگه ما نظرمون عوض کنیم غیر قانونیه، پس حتی خامنه‌ای هم نمیتونه تو این کشور کریمینال نباشه. این از طرف یه خانم جوانی که تحصیلات خیلی کمی 9-10 کلاس سواد داشته و سکس ورکر توی دبی بودش. برای من خیلی جالب بود که یعنی حتی اونها هم میبینن که این رژیم دیگه اصلا نمیتونه هیچ چیز بکنه.
Dr. Hoodfar, I've been criticized last night for not giving a synopsis of what you're saying in Persian, so will you please go ahead and give us a brief?
S'il vous plaît, vous êtes dans une maison de la culture. Est-ce que vous pourriez parler ou français ou anglais? Il me semble que c'est la moindre des choses.
Sorry, sometimes you have to remind me because when I move between two languages, I forget which language I'm talking about.
C'est Festival des Arts Persans. On veut comprendre.
Okay.
Merci.
Yeah, you're right. Do you want me to say it in English or in Farsi or in Farsi? What I said it in English, no?
English, yes. You can go ahead.
Okay. Well, what I was saying was that when I was in Evin prison, occasionally when some of the sex workers that were in prison, when they were fighting with each other, as a punishment, they would send them to my cell. And this young woman, one of the young women that was sent to me, said, well, you cannot be criminal in Iran. Everybody is criminal because nobody can follow the law. Even Khamenei, if Revolutionary Guard goes to the Khamenei's house, Khamenei has got maybe a bottle of whiskey, a book that is not permitted. He changes his mind all the time. Therefore, even he cannot not be criminal. So it's okay if we are in jail, but practically everybody, since everybody is criminal. So I thought that was a very interesting observation from a young woman with very limited education, whose interest is really just everyday life.
I have a question concerning the American sanction of Iran. I think this is a criminal action by United States to impose serious sanction of the Iran. I would like to know what you think about it.
Well, depending what kind of sanction, generally, I mean, not just about Iran, about anything. When we are encouraging the world to go for free trade, you cannot encourage countries go for free trade and only focus on what is best for them. And then tomorrow, if they don't follow your line, you said you can have aspirin, you can have this, you can have a sanction on military equipment, on things that are not essential for society. I think this is very important, and UN had been working on this actually, we were working quite a lot on this with much success. Unfortunately, 9/11 happened. Then after that, nobody really was interested anymore to follow this debate. But sanctions is illegal based on human right, but sanction can be on other kind of trade that is not interfere with everyday life of people. But in terms of Iran, I know some people think if we have sanction and people suffer, then they pour in the street and they change the regime. As far as I'm concerned, we sit here in comfort. We can go to the supermarket, buy everything we want, and then we claim that the hard sanction would work for the regime change. I think we saw the result in Iraq. Yes, it's brought a regime change and brought American there, but are the Iraqis who were fed up with Saddam Hussein because of lack of democracy are better off today? Are the Libyan better off today? Are the Yemenis better off today? I think it's very important that we look beyond things to see the impact of what sanction has done to ordinary people, and not just focus on what is kind of serves us here and makes us feel good. I think that's important part of this as far as I'm concerned with sanction. For Iran, I think all form of military sanction, fine, I'm all for it.
And go for the last two questions, if there is any. Well, if there is none, I think we can thank Dr. Hoodfar for her very instructive presentation. I think you somewhere hit the nail on the head when you mentioned that there need to be a cultural revolution as well. And that's something that you and your colleagues are working hard upon it. And another thing I wanted to say that I read your book, which was your experience in Egypt. And I think you should also write a novel because it's a very nice and easy reading.
I just want to once again thank you for here. I'm sorry that I can't be as interesting as Dr. Carr and interesting examples, but my field is, unfortunately, is all about trouble. But also wanted to say, to me, cultural change, that social transformation is far more important than political transformation. And second to it is the economic transformation. And I think if we have those, then we will, the third, which is the regime change, or a government that is responsive to people and people feel they own the government, will happen. Thank you.